Welcome to your webcast presentation of Superior Customer Satisfaction and Loyalty. I'm Pablo Baez with ASQ. Presenting today, we have with us Sheldon Goldstein. He has taught at the college level for over 30 years in undergraduate and MBA programs. He teaches courses in statistics, quality management, corporate finance, negotiation skills, and quantitative methods. He's the author of Superior Customer Satisfaction and Loyalty, the book of the same, and as a consultant, Goldstein conducts surveys for companies on customer and employee satisfaction, and he designs programs to measure performance. And he also trains employees on methods to achieve superior results, improve profits, and increase customer satisfaction and productivity. He holds a master's in mechanical engineering from MIT and a MBA in finance from Fairleigh Dickinson University. He is a licensed professional engineer, ASQ certified quality auditor, and Six Sigma Green Belt. And last but not least, he's a member of ASQ. Thank you much, Sheldon, for offering to share this presentation with us. Now let's pass the controls over to you.
Paulo, it's a pleasure to be here. Let's start out with a brief overview of this presentation. And one of the things I'd like to begin with is that measuring and improving customer satisfaction is a process that we go through. It's really not quite simple as many companies believe that it is. Companies will measure customer satisfaction, then the president or the head of quality or the vice president of operations or marketing will walk into a manager's meeting and say, here are the values that we got for customer satisfaction, and I'd like all of us to improve customer satisfaction. Of course, everybody says, yes, that's important to do. And then when they measure satisfaction the next time around, they hope they've gotten better, but they haven't really put a process in place. So what we'll do today is we'll look at the elements of an improvement program to get customer satisfaction from where it is, from our baseline today, to some goal that we have chosen for our organization. And the first thing that we have to do is ask our customers what they want. Surprising how few companies actually go out and ask questions in a relevant way about the working relationship that they have with their customers. And then we get our customer feedback and metrics, and we look at our satisfaction ratings. But in addition, I like to look at the attribute importance. So, for instance, if we say we have on-time delivery, what level of satisfaction with our on-time delivery, and we give them some scale, and they give a rating. The next rating that I often ask for is, if we look at that attribute, how important is it to our value proposition with you? In other words, how we rate the importance of this particular attribute. The next thing we want to do is look at the results that we have and compare our data. Means from attribute to attribute and from period to period. So customer satisfaction data tend to fall in the range of ordinal metrics, and then like to see which of the attributes they have rated higher and which of the attributes they've rated lower. In some cases, we have strengths that we can identify that our customers tell us, you do this really, really well. They give you a high rating. In other areas that are rated lower, will tell us that we have areas where we could use some improvement. Now, when a customer says we can use improvement in a particular area, we can use that same on-time delivery, the attribute that we're measuring. They're telling us is that we have a problem, and problems are symptoms. Problems aren't underlying causes. So the reason that we have on-time delivery issues with our customers needs to be investigated, and we'll take a look at some methods to try to uncover the underlying causes for those problems. What we need to do is take a look at where we are and then come up with some improvement objectives and satisfaction goals that we use for our future periods. In other words, we could be at a satisfaction level today of 82%, and so we say, okay, where do we want to be in a year? Where do we want to be in 3 years? Or where do we want to be in 5 years? And we'll take a look at some satisfaction goals and then putting a process together and activities together so that we can actually achieve those goals. Then implement the plan. Any implementation mainly involves team dynamics. And with teams, we get personnel issues. So we have to start thinking about how do we get everybody on the bus, and then how do we get the people on the bus, and how do we get the bus pointed in the right direction so that we can achieve our goals. Lastly, I'll close with an audit of performance, because most of us have been in situations where we've implemented change in an organization, and then we go back 6 months later, and no matter how well we implemented that change, oftentimes we'll find that we've reverted back to old habits and to old performance or old processes. And it's not because people conscious or bad, it's because we haven't audited that performance to make sure that we're continuing to do the things that we've made an effort to change. So as we go through this presentation, I want everybody to think about the fact that this is a process, and we move from place to place within it. We just don't say, okay, we have to improve customer satisfaction. That traditionally is not a methodology that works. So let's look now at the difference between customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. Satisfaction, you can see, is one of those three rings. And the basis of customer satisfaction is something that people feel. When we give customers a rating scale and ask them, how would you rate your level of satisfaction with our products or services, they generally don't have much of an issue choosing one of the boxes to check on our rating scale. However, it is a feeling, and so the next thing that we try to do is we ask them, well, at the end of the day, are you willing to repurchase from a vendor? Are you willing to repurchase from us? The answer is yes. Then that not only is a feeling, but that's an indication of a future behavior. Lastly, we ask them, would you be willing to recommend us to your business colleagues and friends? And they say, and in my consulting service, when someone is really loyal, they answer that question by saying, yeah, I would be willing to recommend you. In addition, I have. So they give one the feeling that they're connected with the value proposition of your company, and they're not only willing to repurchase, in other words, take action into the future, they're willing to recommend and bring more business to you. So they become advocates for your business. The question is, how do we find out what customers want? And it surprises me that more organizations don't go out and have a full survey asking customers what they want. That means what products and services are we providing that you're satisfied with, and you can offer a list of those attributes, and which areas could we use improvement. If we could provide anything else, what would that be? One of the questions that I like to ask as a closing question is, if it could improve one thing about the organization, what would that be? Now, clearly, that's not something for which we'll get a metric, but it's something that we'll get a qualitative answer. So let's take a look at this slide and think about, number one, who do you ask? And we'll chat a little bit about how to come up with the folks that you would into your survey. And what types of questions would you ask? And those questions have to be related to, number one, scale that you're going to use, and number two, the analysis method that you're going to use on the responses. So in any cases, we'll use a metric scale. I like to do both. I like to use a metric scale so we can get a level of satisfaction that I can then compare from period to period. So last year, let's say we did a survey and we got a satisfaction metric. It's 82%. And this year, we use the same survey or a survey that's been modified for the current product services that we have, and we compare answers to common questions from year to year, and let's get an average satisfaction level of 86%. So now compare the 82 to the 86, and we can tell if those results are statistically significant, that we have improved satisfaction from 82 to 86%. But if I get a rating of, say, 77% on on-time delivery, then I know that my customers aren't terribly happy with my performance in on-time delivery, but it doesn't tell me what to do. It says I've got an issue. So instead what I'll do is I may ask a qualitative question and solicit a response, either explaining the numerical value that they gave us or asking them in an open-ended way, if you were going to improve one thing, what would it be? And then if they tell me that it's going to be on-time delivery, they usually give me an explanation for why they believe that. Given that, I now move on and try to do some problem solving, knowing what specific issue is for on-time delivery. And then the next part is, how would we conduct this survey? Okay, so when we're looking at conducting a survey, most of my clients prefer to take the easy way out. And what that means is they go after their existing clients. That includes the first 2 points on this slide, the new clients and repeat clients. These are people who've come to you and have done business with you, and people who have done business over quite some time with you. What they fail to do is they fail to go after lost clients or competitors' clients. And let me talk briefly about that. Customer satisfaction surveys is a little bit more complicated than just saying, please rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how you believe our work is for you and your level of satisfaction with our work. Because we need to get down to the application level, and we need to be able to distinguish between the responses that we get from certain customers versus other customers. I was running a company a few years ago, and we do customer satisfaction surveys every month. And we go out to all of our customers. Out of all of the customers that we had, we would go out to our customers who we had a recent touch in the month. So if we provided a product or a service to a customer, we would then survey them and ask them how it went. So every month we'd get responses back. And of the responses that we got back, we had a very high rate of respondents, and it was around 22%. That now low. Actually, for an unsolicited survey, that's not a bad response rate. 22% of our customers sent back a response to us, gave us a rating, and so I would take a look at that rating. But what that meant is that 78% did not respond. They were not first-time respondents. Now, we can say that those who are first-time respondents have something either very, very good to say about you, very, very bad to say about you. Having 78% of your potential respondents filling away the survey, or let's be nice and say that they simply aren't responding, does give us a really good assessment of all of our customer thinking. So what we would do is we would send out a follow-up, a reminder to those people who are not first-time respondents, and we ask them if they would please fill out the survey. We'd send them another survey and ask them if they would please fill out this survey and send it back to us. And we got a small percentage of those back, and I aggregated those two responses. So when I took a look at the first-time respondents, I would get results that were higher than the accumulated average of those who were not first-time respondents. And so what that told me is that there really is a difference between those who respond first and those who need extra impetus to respond. The discrepancy is big. For instance, if your first-time respondents come up with 92% and your first-time non-respondents who ultimately send a response come in at 75%, that's a huge difference. And I think we want to take a look specifically at why we have that kind of difference. In case we had about 82% satisfaction rating from first-time respondents and about 89% from our not first-time respondents. So we didn't believe that we had a serious dichotomy of interest between those two respondent groups. The next issue is that when we go after our existing clients, we believe that they're going to be a bit more satisfied than those clients that you may have lost in the past. Now, those clients for a variety of reasons. Some of our customers go out of business. Some of them don't use our products or services anymore because they change their product mix. And some of them are unhappy and they get spirited away by our competitors. And we knew what it was that caused our lost clients to go, or competitors' clients to stay with them. That would additionally help us to improve satisfaction across the board. So we come up with a respondent list for surveys. I like to include all of these, if at all possible. In short, the sample should look much like a mini population, and that population depends on the number of customers you have. I had one client who had 8 customers. All of their business was with 8 rather large customers, and 6 of them agreed to respond to our survey. That's a high percentage, and it's telling us of these important clients what their opinions are. So I wasn't at all disappointed at having that small number. If we had thousands and thousands of clients and I only had 6 responses, I'd be concerned that any conclusions that I drew wouldn't be representative of the population. But 7 of 8 was actually pretty good. I have a client who has about 1,000 customers, and I've gone out and surveyed about 300 of them. Again, it's not a huge response rate, but I have 300 responses from the 1,000. And so the question always comes up, how many do I need in order to have a good survey? And it really depends on the level of confidence you want in being able to discern what the overall population believes based on your survey results. And that becomes a statistical calculation, which probably is too complicated to engage at the moment. And some measurement scales. And I bring up these two because they're very, very common scales. I use the top scale, the 1 to 10 scale, very frequently. And I give instructions to the respondents that a rating of 1 would mean not very satisfied, and a rating of 10 means very satisfied. So this gives them a response range from 1 to 10. I like the fact that there's granularity in those responses. In addition, people seem to have a natural understanding of the 10 scale. You know, it's based on our number system, and it also fits with grading. So if somebody gets a 70 or a set of 10, they're getting a C. If they have an 80, they're getting a B. If they get a 90 or 100, they're in the A category. And so they have a tendency to have a natural sense of that scale, and I love to use it. But if you recall, I talked about what is an ordinal scale. An ordinal scale is this satisfaction scale. There are 4 different types of scales. There's a nominal scale, the ordinal scale, the interval, and the ratio scale. I need to get up to the ratio scale, which has the most robust of scaling properties. We can use evaluations like standard deviation to determine what the variability in the data is. When we get down into the nominal and ordinal scales, we don't have that luxury, and we have to use some different methods to determine variability or the differences in satisfaction between attributes. But every scale, including this ordinal scale, has an average, has a mean, and so we can always get the average of any of the respondents to our questions just by doing a strict numerical average. Now, why is the ordinal scale? The reason is that it doesn't contain the interval property. The interval property would be recognized if I say that it's much easier to move customer satisfaction from a rating of 3 to a rating of 4. This to move satisfaction from a rating of 8 to a rating of 9. What that says is the interval from 2 to 3, which is 1, is really different in terms of satisfaction than moving it from 8 to 9. So it doesn't have the interval characteristic. A satisfaction rating of 8 is not actually twice the level of satisfaction of a rating of 4. And so therefore it doesn't have the ratio characteristic. And that's why I place it in the ordinal category. So when we ask clients to rate on this scale, I think it's a very natural scale. Now, a scale that's also quite common is a Likert scale, and this is a 5-point Likert scale that I show here from, I have very unlikely, or we could say very dissatisfied, to very likely or very satisfied. It also has an odd number of response possibilities. That middle response, neither likely nor unlikely, gives respondents an opportunity to bail out in their odds. Some people are not confronted. They really want to take a side. They're either likely or unlikely is the most easy response for them to give, and instead of taking a position, they're likely to take that one. One thing that you'll notice in an even-numbered Likert scale is that middle, that opportunity is gone. And so a forced ranking scale, it forces the respondent to have either somewhat likely or very, or somewhat unlikely or unlikely, but they can't take that position. The point I want to make about this, the scales, put here, but it's very important to have a not applicable option for the respondent, because there are many cases where a respondent will take a look at a category, and let's say that we're asking what level of satisfaction is with our service department. And it may never have experienced the service department or the warranty policy that you have. Given that, we need to allow the customer to say it's not applicable, as opposed to trying to shoehorn it into these scales, because there are many cases where a respondent will look at it and say, gee, I've never experienced the warranty policy. I'll give it a 5. I mean, I don't think it's good, I don't think it's bad, or I'll give it a neither likely nor unlikely. And despite that they have no reason stating it there because they don't have any experience, they feel compelled to check off something. So the best thing that they can do, if we don't have not applicable, is just not answer the question. And then it won't impact our metrics. But if they answer it and they're qualified to do so, then it throws our metrics off. So I would always recommend that we include the not applicable category in any of these scales that we use. Now, we get some responses and we want to calculate the metrics for future comparisons. So we get a whole bunch of respondents giving us ratings, let's say on that 10-point scale, and we do our average and we determine for the various attributes what the level of satisfaction is that they are giving us. Then, if they have any write-ins, and in most of my surveys, I'll ask them to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 what their level of satisfaction is. And then in the instructions, I'll say, if you want to help us to understand the rating that you gave, please put a note after the question, and I'll have a couple lines where they can fill in comments. So now we have two things. We have those metrics that we're going to use for comparative purposes, and we have verbatim responses from the client when they choose to add them as a note to the numeric responses. And they usually categorize them. I'll say, well, okay, this has to do with management, or this has to do with compensation, or this has to do with production, or this has to do with customers. And so we'll take a look at all of the different ways that we can categorize the responses, come up with the most common responses that we have for the verbatims. This always has to be done by hand. We can't really do this by machine, so depending on how many respondents you have and the amount of time you want to spend, having more respondents really increases the time for evaluating these verbatim answers that they give. In addition, I always add questions at the end of a survey that are open-ended. And I gave one earlier. If you had one thing that you can improve about the company, what would that be? And so depending on the business that you're in, you may come up with other questions, and then they get categorized as well. I had one question for a client of mine, and if you could change one thing, what would it be? And they always did price very low, which meant that they thought that the price for my client services were quite high. But when I asked them the question of their perceived value, their level of satisfaction with value, they always came back and they rated it very high. They believed that they got good value, because the responses that I got would say, I pay a lot, but boy, I know that I get just tremendous service, and I'm willing to pay for what I get. But came back and said, if you could do one thing that would improve my level of satisfaction, what would that be? And many of them would come back and say, yes, is adequate for the service that I get, and I'm willing to pay it, but not all of my applications require that kind of really high value, high cost service. It really would help me if I had a lower cost option, and because they don't get it, I'm going to have to think about taking that segment of my business elsewhere. And so when I went back into the management meeting to debrief on the results of the customer satisfaction surveys, I suggested that they might consider a strategy of providing services that are good, better, and best. And that means that they have this high price, so they already have the best out there, and they're doing a good job with that. But maybe they should consider having a facility that provided somewhat less at a lower cost, because there may be a big market for that. And so they checked that out, and actually they did so, and it was a very successful process for them, very successful business venture for them. The dot is, I never would have gotten that just by the discrepancy of price is rated relatively low and value is rated relatively high. But when I said, what would you improve, and can you explain the value that you gave, I got some really great responses that helped my customer develop another line of product that turned out to be very, very successful. So that's what I look for, is common issues and trends. And I personally believe one of the reasons that organizations don't engage in customer satisfaction is because they're afraid if their customers tell them what they really want to be more satisfied, then they're going to have to do it. And that's one of the issues that my clients face. If they tell me, I scare them and I say, if you're not willing to work on some of these things that your clients tell you to do, hire me. Because it's worse to ask them what they and then not do anything than not to ask them in the first place, not to ask them at all. So please be very careful that you're committed to making improvement in the direction that your clients want. And it kind of frightens some people that if the customers tell them what they want, then they have to do it. And there's good news and there's bad news about that. The bad news is, yes, you actually have to do some of the things your customers have asked for. The good news is, or good news and good news. The good news is you have to do some of these things to improve your business. The better news is no one expects you to spend $10,000 to save $10. And so it has to make sense to your organization to do what your customers want. There are many times I've gone back to customers and I've said, that's not a direction that we want to take the business, so we're going to do that. But we had a number of other suggestions that we believe are quite worthwhile and going to engage in those. So continuous communication with your customers, letting them know the results of the survey, letting them know what positions you're taking and what direction you're going in to help your customers is going to be really all that's needed. No one is saying that you have to do this and make bad business choices. You all make good business choices for business. Some of it is driven by your customers. We have a problem, and customers said on-time delivery is an issue for me. So we get into a problem-solving session with our internal employees. And what we look for then is the underlying causes of that. So if we take a look at this cause and effect diagram, it's often called a fishbone diagram. We see a problem out there in the center right, and that's our on-time delivery problem. And now what we do is we have a process by which we do problem solving. We have all of our folks in a room, and this is a real brainstorming session. We say, what about personnel could have caused that problem? Even if it's unlikely, we try to list everything that could potentially have an impact on the problem of poor on-time delivery. So it could be training, it could be that a discrepancy in on-time delivery based on what shift we're on, personally. A lot of rejects in materials in a particular part of our process, and so we may say, well, it could be a vendor issue, it could be some kind of other issue that's associated with our materials and our purchasing. We then go back. We may have nothing that comes to our mind in measurements, so we would take that out. We have to force something silly into this. It's a way for us to be thinking in an organized process for problem solving. What are all the potential things that cause us to have this problem of poor on-time delivery? So we may have machine failures constantly. We have to talk about preventive maintenance or something else. So we fill this thing out, and we come up with all the possible methodologies that we could use in order to solve that problem. Then we have to go through and determine which are the most likely and which are the most important to fix. So let's say we have an issue, and I want to go very briefly through this because I talked about performance and importance earlier. And I want to point out what are the problems that we put into our process that are going to give us the most bang for the buck. Clearly, if our performance is high, going along that top scale, and the importance to our customer is also high, then we fall into, that's one of our strengths. And that category is something that we want to leverage on. These are the things that we advertise. These are the things that we build upon. These are the things that we tell our customers we can really do. However, if our performance is low, and importance to the customer is also low, then nobody cares about this. I mean, we're paying much attention to it. We're not spending a lot of money on performance in this particular attribute. And you know what? Our customers don't really care. They think that it's low as well. However, when the real issue comes in where our performance is low, but an attribute that has very high importance to our customers. In that area, we become vulnerable. And this is when we lose customers. When our competitors go and say, I bet you're not very happy with XYZ's performance in this particular attribute. Well, we do much better, and here, take a look at what we can do. And so they entice the customer to go with them. And oftentimes, it'll be successful if this is something of very high importance to them and very poor importance to you. Now, how do we want to achieve that important score? How do we determine that? That turns out to be a little bit more complicated than at first light it would appear. When I first began going after importance metrics with my clients, customers, I would go out and I'd list these attributes. I'd have 9 or 10 attributes, and I'd say, not only what's your level of satisfaction, which was the beginning part of the survey, I would then come back and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the importance of each of these attributes to you? And when you do that, I found that customers would go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Everything was important. Everything great importance to them, even if it didn't. And the reason they rated it that way is if sometime in the future they need that attribute and they told us it wasn't important, they may lose it. Even though it's not important to them today, they didn't want to give it up. They didn't prove that it had value, but they didn't want to lose it either. Instead, what I ended up with after several iterations is that I would ask the question, of these 10 attributes, I want you to list in a filling question, what are 3 most important to you? And next, what are the 3 least important to you? And it allowed me to discriminate between the highest ranking and the lowest ranking. Frankly, I did have an issue that allowed me to really save money in asking the question that way. In one case, I had I noticed that month after month, a 24-hour service was in the top 3 of the ratings that my clients gave us. This was always in the most important 3. Most of the time, 24-hour service was also in the lowest 3 that they rated. And so I looked at that and said, can't these make up their minds? Well, it turned out that I did more investigation with our clients, and I discovered that 24-hour service was critically important to one segment of my customer base and absolutely unimportant to another segment of my customer base. And so what we did was when the call would come in, we would ask the question, when the call would come in, say, at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, we would say, do we need to send somebody out now? Or make you first call in the morning. We'll have a truck there at 8 o'clock in the morning to take care of your problem. And the vast majority of our customers, 8 o'clock in the morning is fine. I just noticed that I was notified of this issue. But if you come at 8 o'clock, that's perfect also. We don't need you banging around here and doing things at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever you can get here. So it helped us save money. Our service people and production people were very happy that they didn't need to deal with an issue in the middle of the night. So asking these questions and determining the importance can really help you understand your customers' needs. Now we've determined what some of the issues are. We've identified the problem. As you can see, this is nothing more than the scientific method. In some circles, it's called the Plan, Do, Study, Act phases. In some study is check, so it's the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Some will be familiar with that. It's also DMAIC is another methodology for problem solving. So we'll look at this kind of problem solving. The plan phase, the upper right-hand phase in yellow, is the one where we start. We identify the problem, we analyze the causes, and we formulate other measures we can use. So what potential solutions have the greatest likelihood of success from our fishbone diagram? So now we have all of these potential causes. We need to ultimately make a choice and say, okay, these are the things that we're going to work on. We then get into the do phase, where we develop our plan to implement our countermeasures, or the things that we're going to do to improve satisfaction. Then we execute that plan. We then move into the study phase, and we monitor the progress of implementation, monitor the results, and then in the act phase, we evaluate those results, and we can put our process in place. So we're estimating the benefits of improving or eliminating the problem. Does it have strengths? Yes, it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't have chosen this problem to run. What goals for achieving an improvement? And then what specific actions are we going to take in order to create an improved state for our customers? Implementation, therefore, is everything. We can have the best plans, but if we don't put them into action, then nothing happens. We can't just pat ourselves on the back and say, well, we asked all the right questions, we really got to the heart of this issue, and then not implement the change. So we have to go through some of the team dynamics that we talked about a little bit earlier, empowering the team, looking for signs of cooperation and progress, rewarding the team for their hard work and their efforts, and then implementing the changes and establishing an audit pattern. This is critically important, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what we're trying to do is to have a formal change in the process and make sure that we have created a new habit, and we call that refreezing the new. In other words, we unfreeze the old, then we add the change, and then we refreeze the new pattern. And we systematically look then for compliance to our new pattern. To the extent that we continue to have compliance to the new pattern, then we can be reasonably assured that we have a change that we anticipated is going to improve customer satisfaction. If, however, we can't prove compliance, in other words, we're reverting back to our old ways, or we're doing something completely different that turns out to be easier for people but may not have the same end result, they need to go back and study it and re-implement the changes that we originally anticipated were going to be to our benefit. As we talk about audit, I'll use a manufacturing analogy in this slide and talk about the benefits of using audit. In slide, we're looking at the difference between inspection and an internal audit. In the top process, you see that we have some with 3 processes, 1 to 2 to 3, and then we ship. And what I'm proposing here is that before we ship the goods, we do an inspection. Intercept the goods going out, and we do an inspection, whether it's a sampling inspection or it's 100% inspection, is trivial at this time, but we do some sort of inspection. The benefit of doing that is it ordinarily, or to a large extent, will cull out failures that may go to our customers. Now, there are cases where even the list of inspections can't find things that are going to represent infant mortality when we put our product services out to our clients. But to what extent, by doing an inspection at final goods, we can cull out many things. Now, we have to throw those products away, but if you take where we're inspecting, we've already had value added in both processes, in all of the processes, 1 to 2 to 3. There may be cases where we can rework and put a product back into an appropriate process, but in doing so, we incur a lot of expense because we have already created all this value, and now we can redo it. Let me contrast that to internal audit and inspection, where we do an audit of each process. And before we hand off product to the next process, we create an audit, and then we do inspection. If needed, we rework the product or discard it. But the most important step in this part of the process is to change the process so that whatever occurred to move the product phase without being perfect is changed. So we identify that we have an issue, we go back and we change the process so that we don't experience that anymore in our inspection. So inspecting it, everything can move on to process 2. We do the same thing through process 2 and the same thing through process 3. So now, not only are we catching problems before there is gross value added, so we're catching it when changing the process, and rework is much less expensive. We're also creating this audit so they're improving the process every time we go through another inspection. So you can see the great benefits of doing this, both in cost and in modifying the process so that we don't have these issues in the future. One of the things that I like to see when I walk through a facility is statistical process control charts. And there are many control charts, numerical control charts, and attribute control charts, and the extent to which we can cover that in this webinar is very limited. So I put a single slide in here that most of you will be familiar with. This is a standard X-bar chart which measures the mean of an attribute, and the top and bottom lines, that kind of purple line on the top and the yellow line on the bottom, are the upper and lower control limits specified by UCL and LCL. And what they do is they define a process that's in control. You can see that the mean, which is the line with the diamonds on it, the blue line going right down the middle, in this particular case is some new metric. Have the average of the process when it's in control, and this light blue line that you can see is going up and down around the middle line is our process. So we're measuring this particular value, this metric of our process, and we're putting it sample to sample. Now these samples might be a sample at clock 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. and noon and 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. So you can see that we're following the sample results as we go through the day. Anytime one of those light blue dots goes above the upper control limit or below the lower control limit, we know that our process is going out of control. In fact, we can do trending. If we see a number of these dots trending toward the upper or lower control limit, then we can also tell that we're trending out of control even though we're not. We haven't achieved an out of control station yet. So there are many ways to use control charts. I love to see this. At any time that we were going to make a change in a process, if we can put a control chart together to make sure that we are continuing to stay within that changed process, that we continue to control that changed process, that's a great visual for an audit check on maintaining the control of our processes. What customers usually want. This is a summary slide based on my experience working with a number of clients, from small clients to Fortune 500 companies. They want to be able to easily communicate with you. When they issue, they want to be able to get to the right person and get the right answer conveniently. They want to do what you say. These are results from verbatims that I've received over the years from customer surveys. They want you to be trustworthy. They want to know that if you say you'll do something and commit to it, they guarantee that they can trust your word and you can trust theirs. They'll be kept informed. I have a client that is the IT department for a large corporation. And when a customer, one of their users, contacts them and says, I have a problem with my service, if they can't, how long it's going to take or what they estimate for the time to complete the job, and they keep them informed as to where they are, or it could be a long project. It could be a 3-month project, and if there are interim checks with the client, tell them where they are and how they're doing with the project. Customers are much happier than getting a job and then finding out when it's done. They want to be kept informed all along the way. And they want you to provide a resource to them, to be a partner to them instead of selling them stuff. The minute that a client believes that all you're doing is trying to get a sale, it's going to be a bad message to your clients. So the more you can partner with your clients, the more you're a resource to solve their problems, the better off the relationship will be with your clients. So to sum up, we've gotten to the point where we know who our customers are, we know who are going to and survey, whether it's all of them, depending on how many there are, sample selection. We know how to do that. We know how to scale our questionnaire and how to use both metrics and qualitative responses with our customers. Now know how to interpret customer feedback and determine what we're going to work on. Does it fit our strategy in the future? And is this something that's likely to be cost-effective for us? We've gone after the underlying causes, and we've implemented a project solution. We're going to lock in the gains by providing providing audit performance and making sure that those changes that we put in our processes to improve customer satisfaction. Pablo, that's the end of my presentation. Would you like to say a few words?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Sheldon, for sharing this wonderful presentation. Ours and Greater Quality Community continue to communicate how important these webcasts are, so really much appreciated. For you that would like to learn more about Sheldon Goldstein, you can check his website at qualitytrainingsolutions.net. You can email him at sgoldstein@qualitytrainings.net. You can also buy his books at ASQ's Quality Press bookstore, and the website is qualitypress.com. The item number for the book is H1374. About customer satisfaction and loyalty, you can search ASQ's Knowledge Center, and there's articles, books, and webcasts just like this one, and the Knowledge Center/search on ASQ.org. Thank you to Sheldon and to all of you for listening, and we'll join us for our next event.